All right. Well, good evening, everybody. All two of you, three of you now. The hardcores that have hung in there this long. Um, so tonight we're going to continue with really part two from last week. I want to welcome everybody that made it. Tonight is Rio Grande Zoom Everything But Mammals, or a Rio Grande Bosque Everything But Mammals. And once again, I have to thank my Zoom webmaster and tracking buddy Sharon for making this possible tonight. And there's just a couple of you, so feel free to ask questions or add or clarify or whatever. I think there's plenty of time for that. So this the one from last week is on the website. You can go watch it, the first part of this, and this will be up in a few days. And before I go on, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. So anyway, Rio Grande Bosque bugs, birds, bugs, etc. Upcoming October 6th, that's Sunday. It'll be a mock eval. It's about 3 hours long, and it'll be fun and informal. You don't have to do the evaluation if you don't, but you can just participate, see what's going on. And it looks like it's going to be pretty good. I was out there today and it looked excellent. Then really just 3 weeks from now, October 23rd, prep day in the Bosque, and October 24th, prep day in the mountains. Those are also usually about a half a day. And then the evaluations begin. Oh, bird. Now these, when I say that something's not there, usually I'm looking mostly at iNaturalist to see when they've been spotted and whether they're likely to be there at the end of October. So the turkey is unlikely to be there, but then Maggie pointed out if I've got this map in the middle, every one of these little blue things is a turkey sighting. Apparently there is a community that lives near Corrales. And I discovered the other day from talking to Peter that they were released at the Sandia Pueblo. They were hoping to have a flock live there, but they all just went down to the Bosque and took up residence. So if we are on the north end of the Bosque, say by Alameda, we may in fact be in a place where we could see turkeys or turkey tracker sign. Now I don't see very many. And I'm blanking on this bird. This last bird. He's my favorite bird. Can you help me with that, Sharon? What is this? Gamble's Vale. Gamble's, right. So anyway, they do occasionally drift down to the Bosque, but they're pretty much in the mountains and up on the west side. So I've only seen their tracks maybe 2 or 3 times, and I would be really surprised to see them again. Now, it's very unlikely that we'll see a snowy egret. They pretty much head home, or at least south, by the time we get to the end, or by the time we get to the evaluation period. But their tracks often survive. Good mud, under a bridge, anywhere like that. We could easily see an old track that's in pretty good shape. So I think I put one up so we can talk about that a little bit.
So, so that resembles the blue heron quite a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, in fact, almost identical. And I've looked at them, kind of compared the two for morphology, and we've got a slide coming up which will work for both of them, because I can't see a lot of difference. They're so closely related, I guess. It's that they all the egrets and herons seem to have very similar kind of feet. They're just different sizes. So, and then the great blue heron, they're here year round, and with any luck, we'll see lots of their tracks. They're generally everywhere in the Bosque, especially in October. The water will be low; they'll be out fishing in the little bit of water that's left in the Rio Grande. So I would be amazed if we didn't see some of theirs. And they're big. They're about 7 inches, almost 7 inches long, biggest track on the river almost, except for the sand hills. And so I would expect to see one. And what they often ask and have in the past is left or right. They can use either a great blue heron or egret. And this is how you can tell. It's really pretty simple. Left or right in these guys is very basic. They have on the outside, if you get a really good track, in that red circle, there's actually a tiny little web, a little bit of webbing. That's all that there is on their foot, but it'll show up. There it is on both feet. That's on the outside. And then the longest toe of these two toes, the pink one, is always on the outside. Short one's on the inside. This angle is much greater than this one. So the big angle, the big toe, and the web are on the outside. And this, if you can't, even if you can't see all of that detail, this halix or halix, I don't know how you pronounce it exactly, is always set inside. So here's the bird right in this spot. And that one, instead of coming straight down in this yellow line, it's set in. And this one, instead of coming straight down, it's set in. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of evidence to tell you whether it's left or right. So that's a good question if you just know those little tricks. Any questions about that? Okay. Now the other bird that will be there, and I expect to see a lot of these, is the sandhill crane. Their feet look somewhat similar, but they're different in a lot of ways. Heavier bird. This is a much heavier bird than the heron, so they really have a tendency to leave a deep track. And there's no halix. There is a little tiny thing here sometimes, but in general, there's no halix at all. It's just this three, and a much wider kind of stance on these guys too. And the only two that you could confuse at that size range are the heron, sandhill crane. And if you look at them side by side, you've got lack of halix, the depth, and finally, the most importantly, the sandhills are almost never alone. If you find one sandhill track, you'll probably find 50, whereas the great blue heron are solitary hunters, and there's usually a lone track and maybe one or lone path, and only one that one bird at a time. So those two things really make a difference.
Can you tell the difference between the right and the left on a sandhill crane?
Oh, left and right. You know, I haven't really been able to spot that as well. I don't see like a web on these guys, and these two toes, they often seem the same to me. So I should probably do a little research on that, but I'm sure that the long toe will be on the outside if I do that, but I haven't really had a chance to look at it much. Frankly, it's hard to find information on left and right on birds. It's just not in a lot of the books, but it may be in a question. That's a good idea. That's a good thing to ask, Cher. Thanks. I will have an answer for that soon, I hope. Or any other questions about telling these apart? They really don't look that much alike. All right.
Cool.
Now the two little birds that hang out on the edge of the rug.
Mike, wait a minute. There was a question.
Okay, what was it?
On the sandhill crane,
Yeah.
if there's a turkey in the area.
Yeah, well, you have a little bit more trouble, but there's a couple of things that'll help you. First of all, the stride length. A turkey stride length is short, stumpy little legs. Sandhill crane has long legs, and so the strides are much longer if you can figure that out. Okay. And they still look a little different. They don't seem to have the patterning on the bottom of the foot as much that you see on a turkey.
Okay, like on the different joints and stuff.
Yeah, like the lines. You can this bird over here, the gray blue heron has it, but it's very unlikely that we'll see a turkey, even though there's a few up there. Never seen a turkey track in the Bosque yet. So unless you're absolutely sure it's a turkey, and if it's a turkey, you'll know because there'll be other indications like scat and so forth.
Okay.
They usually announce their presence in a lot of ways. They're digging everything up and so forth. And that's another way to tell if the sandhills are foraging. They're not fishing, so they dig holes, they scratch stuff, and they just they make a little more of an impact than the herons who are just walking along looking for fish. All right, so the little birds on the river's edge, spotted sandpiper, killdeer. From what I can tell, looking up, the sandpipers will be gone by the time we're there. The killdeer may be there. They're there in numbers today. I saw them, and these are pretty easy to tell apart. They're almost the same size. These are actually these things are the same, approximately the same. They have a very even toe pattern, no difference in the angles on either side, and they have a halix. So if you just look at enough of them, there's always a bunch. Find a halix, that's a sandpiper. These killdeer, no halix, and this is a much smaller angle than this. So to me, they look like little anchors almost. And but I think we're almost certainly going to see, if anything, probably killdeer. But they don't last because they're right on the edge of the river. They'll wash away pretty quick. So unless the killdeer are here, I don't expect to see that in October either, or the end of October. Duck. We will see ducks, and they have ass ducks because they're everywhere and they make good tracks. And so here we have I can't tell the difference between mallards and pintails, any of the others. And I don't think they usually just ask duck. It's close enough. And 90% of the time, if it's a track you can find, it's probably going to be a mallard anyway. So there it looks like what, about 2.5 inches long. There it worked pretty much the same. They have asked right or left on duck track. So this is the outside. It's much longer than the inside. And that'll tell you every time. And then if there is a helix, it'll be on the inside. So this is a left trail, left duck foot. Just look for the long one, and you can't go wrong. And here you can see it in live action. This is a mallard walking. So right, long one, left, long one, so on and so on. Even with one track, you can do it. But if you get two, you can crystal clear. They have a very pigeon-toed walk, so it can get a little complicated. But if you have enough of them, it's not a problem. And then geese, very common. They're everywhere all the time. Much larger. It works the same way. Long one on the left. Long one on the left, that's a left foot. Long one on the right, it's a right foot. And sometimes these can be a little challenging when the webbing disappears, because they might look a little bit like either a sandhill or an egret without the helix showing. But the key is it's curving. That curve does not exist in those other birds. This is a paddler's thing. If they paddle, they have a curve. And often there's a little ball-like depression right there, because these are such heavy birds that they really do leave a serious track. And that's the scat over there, green everywhere.
Hey, Maggie, when we did the last eval and we were looking at the geese tracks, and they said, is it male or female? And the question that everybody was asked and was thinking of is, well, one of the sets looked smaller than the other sets. So I assumed that was a female. So female geese actually have, what did he say, like 10 or 15% smaller? It wasn't very much, right?
Yeah. No, I tried, and I looked that up after you told me. That's pretty much what I saw. That's a pretty small difference. So how many people got that right, Chair?
I don't know. Do you know, Maggie? I don't know.
That's a new one. I've never heard that one before.
But there are some birds where the male is smaller than the female.
Yeah, I mean, predators for sure.
So like raptors?
Yeah, in raptors it's common, but like a turkey, the male is much larger.
Okay.
Because it depends on the birds.
Okay.
It's a good question. I need to put that in one of these PowerPoints, I guess. I had a hard time finding evidence or pictures of it though, because I did look after you told me. Okay, here we go. Rock pigeon. Always ask this. They're everywhere. You can't miss the tracks. The key to these guys is they're curving. Everything's curving. The foot curves, the toes curve, the track curves. And they walk around more than any bird in the Bosque. So under every bridge, there's going to be almost certainly going to be some of these guys hanging out, walking around. And they have nests underneath. And I was confused about this nest for a long time. And then I managed to catch the inhabitants. So this is under the bridge, and they're just kind of a pile of sticks and goo cemented together. There's several of them under each bridge, it looks like. Yeah. And then roadrunner, always ask a roadrunner, and then direction and which foot. And it's simple. Long toe points forward, and it's on the outside. So that's the left. It's going that way. And they always walk. I've never seen anything else. No hopping there. Click swallow
Wouldn't
nest.
you say they were running since they're road runners?
Well, that's actually a serious question, because is it a walk or a trot? In a bird, I don't know. Guess they don't really seem to walk much. You're right. They kind of have a trot going everywhere they go. It seems like, at least the ones I see in the neighborhood do. All right. So swallow nests, every time they ask, Casey really likes these. He's fascinated by these birds. So they're under the bridge. They won't be hard to spot. Basically, it's a bag with a hole in it. There's other cliffs or other swallow nests, but these are the only ones I've ever seen that look anything like that. Okay, so feathers. Last time, and they often find feathers, and probably the easiest feather to find is a goose feather because there's just a lot of geese. And I didn't know how to do this, but somebody helped me just before the question, so thank God. So basically, there's a couple ways. One is just size and color. That's a big feather. So you know you're looking at a big bird, and the color is kind of goose-like. It's got what's called a tegmen. This little line right here, you can kind of see it's different. This is an extra heavy part of the feather for heavy birds. It helps them get off the ground. It's reinforcing. If you turn the feather, and they let you touch the feathers usually. If you turn it in the sun, you'll see that this shines differently than the rest of the feather. It gives a nice sheen, but you have to kind of turn it over to find it. The other thing is they have these crazy long quills. That I don't know of another bird that has a quill that long on their feathers. So between those two and where you find them in the Bosque, a good chance that's what it's going to be. The one thing is, if there's enough feathers, their body feathers are iridescent, which can be a shock if you don't know that, but they actually are iridescent. So if you find a body feather and put it in the sun, or it's in the sun, it should give you quite a color show. And this is pretty common. Roadrunner tail feather, you can see it right there. He's got one on his body, and there's the tail feather. If we find that, if they find one, I bet we'll see it in the question. And then lots of this in the Bosque. This is Roadrunner scat, and it can look in a lot of different ways. But if you look really close, you'll find that it's always a pile of tubes, and you can see one of the little tubes. They're just piled, and they're kind of, you can see them in there. There's another one. So if you look at it closely, a lot of times you can see that it's just tube after tube, all kind of mixed up and piled on one another. And then sometimes the guy who told me this is, and sometimes there's vanilla coating, which is what you see there, the white part, the uric acid. But that's everywhere. They can find that anytime they want. Now the spotted ohi, they haven't asked, but I wouldn't be surprised because they're also everywhere in the Bosque, and they're a little different than other birds. They're a little bigger, and they hop everywhere, and they hunt on the ground. That's where they live. So I see their tracks pretty regular. It may show up. It's a hard one. The size is really the only way. It's kind of in between, bigger than sparrows, and smaller than rock doves or anything like that. And northern red flicker, the feathers are real common in the Bosque. That's when they can show you, and if you know what you're doing, you'll identify it. Tracks, they are hard to find, and I've almost never seen them. So it's like a tiny roadrunner, and if that's what you see, then that's a red flicker. But they spend so little time on the ground. I've tried everything to find one, and only in the snow have I ever had it. But the feathers,
I have a question about the feathers.
Sure.
So this feather has an orange spine down the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, what do you call that part?
Ricus, I think.
Okay, well, anyway, it's orange. Do all of the feathers on a flicker have that or not?
That's a good question. Everyone I've seen does. But then maybe I saw somebody didn't know were flicker feathers because they didn't have it. But I think most of them do. At least, and the ones that I pick up, hiking, everyone I've ever seen had that shocking orange on there. Okay. Any other questions on that? Before I move on, one other thing, I don't have a picture of it. They could do it in the winter or in the spring or in the fall rather, which is when we'll be there. The flickers move down to the ground and start eating ants, and they will actually tear into ant hills. So if you see an ant hill with a bunch of kind of circular divots out of it, that is probably a red flicker eating ants by tearing up the actual ant hill.
Just as
there's often a raven question or a crow feather question.
Wait, Maggie is talking.
Sure.
Just as a point of info, I remember there was a post at some point about the chest feathers with the little heart-shaped spots. Those don't look like they have an orange quill. It looks like a white one like normal, but I think any of the large feathers, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't, maybe I've seen those, but I didn't know what I was looking at, but
So are you saying the chest feathers are white?
The quill of it is white. It looks
Oh,
like a
oh,
regular
oh,
bird feather quill
okay.
as
Great,
opposed
thank you.
is it,
yeah.
so does it have any orange tint at all?
I don't think so. I don't know if y'all
Okay.
can see that whatsoever, but
And you know,
Oh, that is so cute.
adorable.
I think we have seen that before, but I don't think I knew it was a flicker. Oh, that's
Apparently.
adorable.
can you hold that up again? I didn't see it.
Okay.
Oh yeah. That's cool. All right. And practically speaking, there's a limit to what they can do with feathers because they're so hard to know them all. So every time they pulled out a feather, it was pretty common and it was identifiable.
Well,
There are
that's pretty identifiable. A
yeah,
heart over their heart.
I
I
know.
mean, that is just too cool.
And if we see that, but mostly they don't go for that kind of obscurity because feathers are tough and they don't want everybody to fail everything. So they're going to do, you know, ravens, crows, turkey feathers are very, very popular, obviously. Things that people can identify. But that is cool. I'm going to have to add that to my PowerPoint now. Thank you, Maggie. All right. So, yeah, a lot of these show up. I don't have them all. You know, you can go to Feather Atlas and look at them or look in one of the books, but they're black. The raven feathers much longer, and they say they're iridescent, and you can see it, whereas the crows are not. I'm not sure how if I can take that to the bank, but just kind of figuring out the sizes, and there's so much overlap. It's really tough. All right, herps. There will be some herps. Surprisingly enough, the the frogs are still there. Late October, they manage. I don't know. I guess they're hardy. So that's a frog track. That's the direction of the frog track. Um, I imagine if they find one, they'll show it to us. They did last time I was with them, and that's you know, the inside are the front feet, the outside of the big back feet. The direction is the direction of the kind of the open part of it points towards the direction. And here is a track of frogs, and they hop. So it's a unique track. They go from this one position to exactly the same position at the end. So every one of them looks the same. And you can tell which way he's going by looking. Well, first of all, if you find the front feet, they're pointing to the front, and the back feet kind of make almost like an arrow pointing back, not the direction they're going, but the direction that they came.
So just to be clear, what direction is this one going?
He's going the same direction as the frog below him. So if we were to like find the front feet that are in front of the back feet, here's a front, here's a front. They're in front of the back. Same thing here. There's the big back foot. There's the front and the front in front. And even if you can't tell the difference, if you were to draw a line from that to that, you would have a V, and the open part of the V points in the direction of travel. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Turtles, they will still be around. They amazingly how often they pop up, how long they last, how soon they come out. But if we found a turtle track, they usually look something like this. This is a big one. You can see there's a little carapace drag in the middle here, the shell. Here's the feet. They always look like a railroad track. This distance never changes because turtles' feet can't really go back and forth. They can only go forward. And such tiny little strides. And the question that they asked last time on this was the direction of travel. And this is in the actual photo. In life, you could see it. In the photo, you can't quite. What you look for is the claws. The claws are pointing in the direction. I think that's them there. That's them there. And the turtle, therefore, is going from right to left. Sometimes you can't see claws, and then I don't know what to tell you. I think they won't ask the question then. That makes sense? Claws fix it. If there's no claws, it can be really hard. Snakes, they will still be around, a few of them anyway. And I can't tell the difference between different kinds of snakes. I don't think they ask different snakes. Maybe there's a way, but I don't know what it is. Sometimes they say you can tell the direction of travel. The large push-offs are sending them this way, and there seems to be one there and one there, but then there seems to be one big one there in the other direction. So I don't know if they'll ask that, but that's the only way that I've seen people try to say they can tell which direction the snake is going. Now, there will be toads. They survive late October, and if they're out, then the tracks will be everywhere. And so you can see here the big back feet, the little front feet kind of pointed together. But most of the time, this is what you'll see. Something like that. The dimples of four, dimples of four, dimples of four. And this is what they asked last time. Who is this? It's a toad. I don't know what kind, but it's a toad. In the direction of travel, sometimes you can tell. That looks like a front to me, but man, who could tell? A lot of times there's even less than that.
How do you know that's not a frog?
Well, a couple of reasons. For one thing, it's in the sand, and most frogs don't spend much time in the sand. And when like a frog, let's say a bullfrog, the tracks, they're set of fours. There'll be one, and then a great distance away will be the next one. Think of a frog hopping through the air, whereas toads they're just barely making it. So the tracks are usually really close, this toad is not going far. And the shape is different. They're just like a box almost. And the other ones were weird. They had the long toes coming out in front of the little ones. On toads, I don't see that much detail difference. I'm sure it's there, but it doesn't show up in the sand, I guess. Now, whip-tail lizards, their tracks are everywhere. By the time we get there, they should be kind of only a few stragglers might be left, if that. And it's pretty distinct, these lines going in all directions with tracks. Then we'll go up a little closer to see those. So here's a close-up of that picture. You can see there's a track, there's a foot, back foot. Looks like back foot. This is what Kim Cabrera, the drawing is pretty good. Front, back, front, front. So if you see that line and you get down really close and you'll find these little feet, that's a lizard. All right, now the fun part. They ask this every time. God, it's the easiest one. But if you're from out of town, I guess it's hard. So antlion pit, and they also have tracks. I don't have a good picture of them, but they're called doodle bugs because they leave these insane, curvy tracks from pit to pit. They're everywhere, so that's one of their filler questions. And cicadas, they can ask this, and they've asked all three the last time I did this, I think. And so you've got the life cycle kind of, here's the exit burrow coming out of the ground. Very common to find this on hard packed trails because they seem to come out there. No dirt around here because they pack it inside with special little paddles. They come out. This will be almost always near some trees. They climb up to the tree, and then they shed their skin and fold out their wings, and when they dry, they fly. So this is a shed skin, or exuviae, I think they call them. And then the female will fly over and find a nice branch, and on the underside of the branch, she has an ovipositor that can cut right through the wood, cuts through, it leaves eggs in there. And when the eggs mature, they'll fall to the ground and go back into the dirt where this burrow came from. And so that I would expect to see as well. Bug or pillbug, year-round, everywhere. So if you see this tiny little track, it's almost always going to be a sow bug. And then the darkling beetle. They're out a long time too. They seem to last well into the late fall. And it's easy if you can find, if it's a good track, you can tell the direction. Imagine that as like a little arrow. It's pointing in the direction of the travel. There's another one here. You need a pretty good track, but basically, if you look for that arrow shape, it'll help you figure out which way they're going. And they come in all sizes, from very small to very large. The caterpillar frass, there won't be any caterpillars, but the stuff can last a long time if it's covered Looks like little tiny hand grenades, especially under a bridge, and we might see that. And the Mantis Uthica,
Wait a minute.
Okay.
What is a frass?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's scat. Good question, Chair. Yeah, it's just what they call it, but it's and it's uniquely weird. As you can see, it's all like segmented. That's why they say hand grenades, because it's got this weird kind of lines up and across. And so if this goes into a protected area, it'll be there for a long, long time. So I wouldn't be surprised if we could find some in the summer. If you look, you can find it often, but it might be there if they find it. I'll show it to you. And then the Mantis Uthica, which is just the egg case, they last forever. There won't be anybody in them. They've all moved on. But the case itself will be on a branch if they can find that. They've asked that in the past.
And those holes are where they escaped from?
I think the holes are where something ate them. I'm not sure about that. Yeah, maybe that is them coming out. It's a good question. We should ask Jack about that one. I bet he knows. All right, that's going to go pretty quick. Now we're into the realm of stuff they haven't asked, but they could. Asian clams introduced invasive species. Well, not really invasive. They don't have a big impact, but they're all over the Bosque. In very shallow water, they leave these trails. It's like a little furrow almost. You won't see the clam, just the furrow, but they may ask that. I haven't done it yet, but they could. And these little guys, if they're underground, the sandhills will go after them, and you'll find a funnel-shaped hole in the sand near the river's edge, or a lot of holes as they punch down trying to find those little clams. All right, here's one that they will ask, have every time. Bagworm moth case hanging on trees all over the Bosque. And then bark beetle or engraving beetle on the cottonwoods usually. Laying on the ground mostly is where we'll find them. And crayfish, now they won't be there. They actually last into October, but not through October. And if you see a track, when they're alive, it looks like this. Very weird thing. But these little bodies last for a long time. And this one had been dead a very long time when we found it. So and last time I had one of these questions asked, it was just a single claw sitting on the river. So we may see a crayfish skeleton. They don't seem to get eaten by other creatures. They just kind of turn white like that. And I find them year round, so that's a possible one. And ants. And I wanted to ask you and Maggie about ants, because this one on the left was in your evaluation, right, Cher?
Yes.
What did he tell you about that? Do you remember?
He said that the gravel, what did he say about the gravel, Maggie?
Well, formic acid or something. There was a note on the.
Oh yeah, it kills all the plants around it because of the formic acid. That's what he said.
Did he tell you what kind of ant it was?
Carpenter. Didn't he? Harvester.
Harvester. Okay. Yeah, that's because on the picture it said carpenter, which is very different. They have, coming out of a tree. So harvester. So these are both harvesters then. And this is a picture I took. And they're rough harvester ants. They can be all black, all red, or black and red, but they're the ones everyone in New Mexico knows from just walking around.
And didn't that woman down at the nature center tell us to look around the edges of the
yeah, since she mentioned that, I've looked and you can see they leave
yeah, it's right here.
Yeah.
I don't have a big picture. That is all of the little seed casings, right?
Yeah, the detritus from them harvesting the seeds. They make a pile and then take the seeds out and take the seeds into the mound. So the casings are left, and sometimes some seeds too, because they haven't gotten to them yet.
Sure. And I think that's all around here. And it looks like it probably got washed away on this side. So if you looked in here, maybe you'd find them on this other one. And once you mentioned it, I realized I had seen it. I just didn't know what it was. So, but ants should be the right answer. I mean, I assume that's the answer that he was looking for with you guys. Now, here's a one that may be asked and one that probably won't be, but I'm hopeful it will someday. So on the left, earthworm castings in the sand or in the mud of the river. They seem to be
Okay,
there.
what's a casting?
It's poop. They pushing their poop up, and a lot of it is just dirt because they're basically, they're eating dirt and taking the nutrients out of it. So I'm not exactly sure the mechanism that creates this, but it comes from below, and makes for these little piles of, looks like little brown ball bearings almost. And they may be, I saw many of them today when I went down there. And then on the right, variegated mud-loving beetle tunnels. These are everywhere all the time. They're very little small beetles. They're under here pushing it up. So these are like little ridges. And they haven't asked this, but I am hoping they will, and we'll all know it because it's such a common sign. And that's the end. We're actually ahead of schedule. Any questions or comments about any of that? Let's see here. Let's see. Well, we ended up with 3 people. All right. So now what I don't think I left anything off, but if you wonder what's there, then on the website there is a Bosque question list that has everything I know of that they've asked. And if you go and look at that, you can see if there's anything missing. There may be something, but I'm pretty sure I got most of them. So let's
Mike,
see.
how would they find the website address?
It's on my email. So the email that sent you the Zoom that allowed you to find the Zoom, at the bottom, you just click on there for Duke City website or Duke City Trackheads. Duke City Trackheads. It'll take you there. Right? It's actually, it says website on it, but it's Duke City Trackheads. Does that make sense? So look at the bottom of every email I send you, and you'll see a link there for both the Facebook and the website. And if you go to the website, look under documents, there will be a list there called Bosque questions. And then that will have everything that I can think of that's ever been asked in the ones I did. But it may not have everything from last spring because I wasn't at those. They may have surprises. They always have them anyway. So don't count on the list being complete because it's never quite right. They always add stuff. Okay. I think
Maggie, you have an email address if people have questions, right? Could you give it to us?
As soon as I remember it, yeah. It is, oh my word. Maggie NM tracking at Gmail.
Okay.
It's easy to remember except for me.
Thanks.
Maggie, MAGGIE. NM tracking.
I will be sending out, we'll post the link to this in the next couple of days. And then next week, the link to the very last one, which will be one day for the mountains because there's less stuff on that. And I'll send out a second notice to everybody about Sunday. And if you're here, I'll tell you right now, it'll be muddy. There's more mud than river now. So it's good for tracking, but it makes it a little tough to get around. Thanks everybody for coming.
Okay. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you again.
Thank you.